for 141 King George Road, and we're here to discuss that application. This meeting is being streamed on YouTube and will be available for viewing afterwards. If you are viewing and have comments or questions that aren't brought forward, please let me know following the meeting, and I can do my best to have them answered. If you'll just give me one moment, I'll share my screen for our presentation. So Darlene, can you enable the share screen function for me, please?
Absolutely, Sean. And you're ready to go.
Okay. Can everyone see that? Okay.
Yep, that's fine. It's on the screen.
Great. We'll just begin the meeting by introducing everyone. Then I'll go over briefly an overview of what a zoning bylaw amendment application is, some of the public input opportunities that are available. The applicant who's in attendance tonight will then go over what they're proposing in their presentation. And after that, we'll open up the floor to any questions for people who have registered for this meeting, as well as questions from councilors. So to start off with introductions, from Ward 2, we have Councillor Sless. At this point, Councillor Utley does send his regrets. He is in another meeting, but he will try to attend this one if he can get out of that meeting in time. From Ward 3, we have Councillor Martin. Councillor Martin, I didn't see if Councillor McCreary did attend.
I haven't seen him yet, but he might be on.
Okay, Councillor McCreary might be joining us as well. From staff, we have Joe Muto, Manager of Development Planning, and Gary Peaver, who's the Manager of Development Engineering. They're here to assist with any questions that might come up. And we have Jeff Medeiros, an intermediate planner who's taking notes. From the applicants and owners, we have Steve Cornwell from Sierra Construction, as well as Michael Lowith from Lowith Greenberg, who's the developer for the project. And I think they have some additional members of their team here who they can introduce once it's their turn to present. So I'll now start to explain the zoning amendment process. The zoning amendment, or the zoning bylaw, is something that states how land may be used, where buildings and other structures can be located, the types of buildings that are permitted, how they may be used within the city of Brantford. It also regulates lot sizes and dimensions, parking requirements, building heights, and setbacks from the street. So in this particular instance at 141 King George Road, the lands are zoned general commercial or C8, which is shown on this slide. When a development is proposed that does not meet the current requirements of the zoning bylaw, an amendment application is required by the Planning Act, which is provincial legislation. So in this instance, the application to amend the zoning bylaw is to facilitate the development of a 13-story mixed-use building, the site plan of which is shown on this slide. This amendment doesn't meet the current requirements of the zoning bylaw, which have a maximum height of 6 stories, and 13 stories are proposed, which necessitates the amendment, in addition to a few other variances from the zoning bylaw. I'll wrap up my presentation now. Just like to note, this is only the first meeting for this proposal. Staff are still in the process of analyzing this application, working with the applicant to refine it in different ways, and we're also collecting feedback from the public tonight for the applicant to incorporate into their application. The next meeting will be considered the statutory public meeting by the Planning Act, and that's when the proposal is presented to the mayor and city council, who will then vote on it. Anyone who'd received notice of this meeting will also receive notice of that next public meeting and more opportunity to provide input and feedback for this. So with that, I'd just like to remind all members of the public, if you do have comments or questions about this application, please let me know. I'll forward it to the appropriate parties or make sure that council is aware of those comments. With that, I'd like to go ahead.
If I could just interject for 1 second. I believe we have 2 registered speakers this evening from the public, but there are a number that are registered that wanted to hear it live through this process. If one of those that are registered to just view decides now after hearing some things that they would like to ask a question, do they have that opportunity? And what would they do to get it?
Yeah, Councillor, they don't have that opportunity. Because this is live on YouTube, we kind of have to generate a unique link to register for this Zoom meeting, so people just can't come on. And
Okay.
just kind of for security purposes, if they do have a question, I encourage them to write that down, write it down or email it to me. I can make sure my contact information is available so that I can pass those questions on.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
Yep. Okay, so I think I would like to now pass things over to Michael and Steve to go over their proposal. Darlene, I know Michael does have a slideshow. We can just make sure he has permission to share his screen.
Okay, let me just go in and do that. Okay, permission is given for Michael. I'm sorry, the other name, Sean, was?
Stephen Cornwell.
Yes.
Stephen, I don't know if you have a presentation or not.
Okay, we're ready to go.
Okay, can everybody hear me? And can you see the screen with white screen with lots of circles? Okay, great. Okay, well, thank you very much to the city councilors, city staff, and all their participants this evening. We're really excited to be showing you what our plans are for this terrific strategically located property. So a little bit about myself. My name's Michael Loweth. My company is Loweth Greenberg Management Corp. I'm actually was born in Brantford. Grew up on a dairy farm on Powerline Road, which thankfully is still running today by my cousin. As a teenager, we moved to Woodstock, where I went to high school and lived there until I was a young adult. Then got married and moved to Toronto. Otherwise, my wife wouldn't marry me, so I had to go there. So we have 2 teenage kids. My wife runs our real estate sales business, and I run our development business, which specializes in purpose-built luxury rental communities. So I guess a year and a half or so ago, the owners of 141 King George Road, who ran the restaurant, actually came to my wife and were interested. Business wasn't so great. The pandemic had just started, and they thought, we may be able to help them sell the property. And they knew that we built multi-family developments. So to be honest, at first they told me about the property. I wasn't that interested. It's on a busy road, you know, a highway close by, and you know, lots of kind of strip mall development. But I said, you know, I'll come out and have a look, and I can maybe help you price it, and you know, maybe we'll find you a buyer. So I came out to the property, and you know, it was a big, you know, 4-acre piece of asphalt. But I drove on the site and I looked through the fence and saw this amazing park. And I thought, you know what, this could be a pretty special site, and you know, maybe we need to look at it further. So long story short, we had all our consultants come and have a look, and we thought, you know, it had such an amazing south exposure where we thought we could wrap, expose our units to being, part of the park is, you know, crucial to me and our tenants. So, you know, we ended up buying the property, and over the last, 8 to 10 months, we've together with the city, we've looked at different ways how we could develop the property to complement the community today and for the future. And so here we are today. So this is our concept vision of the development right now. We wanted a mixed use development. There's a lot of commercial on King George now, but we thought, with, a significant amount of residents on the property, drugstore, shopping, medical, it's really important to keep that, commercial strip vibrant on King George. So we have a podium with commercial. The parking structure is actually behind the commercial portion. This is the commercial rendering from what it would look like from the street. So those big windows would be, commercial spaces. The building is stepped back, and there's residential obviously above, but behind that those commercial windows is the parking structure where you can kind of see the side and the ramp there. So I'll just move through here. So once you get up on top of the parking deck, we have two buildings. This is the courtyard between the two buildings. This building is the one that is closest to King George. Here you can see both buildings. The parking that you see here now is it's obviously elevated. It's on top of the parking structure, and it's really for dropping guests or guest parking. Dropping off friends, taxis, whatever it may be. In this rendering, I'll show you the landscape plan that we have in a few slides further down. But this property is going to be every green area that you see is going to be heavily landscaped with trees, flowers, grasses. The one thing that I hate are these big concrete blocks, residential blocks, and there's just no life to them. For all our developments, they're just soaking in greenery. Everything's irrigated. The lawns are meticulous in the gardens. I think that's very, very crucial, not only to the tenants, but also the community that we're a part of. Of course, the park is the main feature to this property. It has incredible over 300 feet of exposure on the park. It's west facing. It's very, very crucial to the whole plan and our concept. Like I said, if the park wasn't there, we wouldn't even have considered this property. This view, you can see how the parking and the ramp integrate with the buildings. Again, the two buildings, the majority of the buildings are facing directly south. So the massing, the property's just over 500 feet deep, I think about 525. But we wanted the massing on the King George side and the park side to be as small as possible. And we wanted to open it up in the middle that's kind of facing directly over other commercial properties to be the large massing. We need a lot of units on this property to be able to provide the service, the amenities, to serve the type of residents we're looking for. So we think this was a really nice way to be able to bring a lot of units to an area that desperately needs them without, with maximizing the site as well as maximizing the sunlight. So that's what we have there. Inside the building, the outside of the building is one thing, but we need tenants in this building to love it and stay in it, and they have to be special. Our ideal client are empty nesters, people that have lived in their home for a very, very long time and really don't have a great alternative. They live in homes that are too big, but they're not going to move into an old-fashioned building without any amenities or service or programming. So that's our target market, and people want to be able to move in with the furniture that they have in their houses. They can't move into tiny little boxes that is appropriate for a young person. These are people with families and holiday dinners and so forth, and big kitchens, and that's what we try to provide. It's a high-end environment. When you downsize, it's only space. You're upgrading your lifestyle. And that's really what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to create spaces that will actually improve someone's lifestyle as they get older, and they can, enjoy retirement in an environment that is safe, health oriented, full of life and spirit, and well programmed. Our bedrooms are full-size bedrooms. You put a king-size bed in this particular picture is a queen-size bed, but the bedrooms are all designed for, a chair or a couch and a king-size bed. Here's another example of one of our bedrooms in another building that we built. So it's all about quality and bright spaces. And places where you can put real furniture, not pretend, apartment furniture, but, full-size couches, hutches. We don't want people to buy new furniture. We want them to take their possessions with them when they move. And the amenities, I talk about, lifestyle and amenities and programming. So, for example, in our buildings, we have full-time concierge. We have usually a runner to get a car for someone to bring it up to the front to help with groceries. We have, of course, with all the online shopping, we have Amazon drop-off rooms. In these buildings you go into, you see dozens and dozens of packages piled up, and that's not appropriate. So we have proper storage for those. We have a full-time event coordinator for all our properties. So different holidays and activities, whether it's health or holidays or whatever the theme is, that's provided. In this particular picture, this top arrow, if you can see it, on both buildings, facing directly south is a rooftop terrace. So it's a lounge where people can walk out onto a beautiful patio and see the sun, and you look to the right, the sunset. It's just a place for people to meet, play cards, watch a movie. If you look at the arrow directly on your left, this is actually within the podium. So this is in the parking structure. We use part of that space to have a gym. The gym is, full glass windows overlooking the park. Next to that is a change room, and for men's and women's full change room and bathrooms. And next to that, where you see the large windows, where the arrow on the right is pointing to, is an indoor swimming pool with a very large terrace just off of that, obviously right on the park. The grounds, you can see, hopefully you can see there's a walkway that actually loops right around the entire property, and that's going to be filled with flowers and, nice light standards and benches and so forth. So people can get out and exercise and access the park. And, it's all about, lifestyle. And, that's the type of person, those are the services we're providing in order to get that, that type of tenant. This is a rendering of what the pool is going to look like. Lots of furniture. There's a hot tub on the far left. There's going to be a steam room and a sauna. Again, this is attached right to the change room, and on the other side of the change room is the gym, and again the terrace overlooking the park. So I think this would be a beautiful space. This is just a picture. It's not an actual rendering. The other one was a rendering, but this is just the idea of the gym overlooking the park. And also behind the gym and the swimming pool, we had a bunch of space in there. We decided, well, hey, why don't we build a sports court? My wife and I, a year or so ago, we went invited to someone's cottage, and they had a pickleball court, and we kind of fell in love with that and thought that was a great thing. And maybe if we have a bunch of wasted space in a building, maybe we could build a pickleball court and maybe a half-court basketball court. And also for our programming, we could have yoga, different types of programs. So that's going to be really exciting as well. This picture, I'm really proud of it, but it's very, very hard to look at. It's the site plan that Sean shared with you at the beginning. But all that black and all those lines represent plantings, flowers, grasses, trees, just to push that point that this is going to be a garden. It's not going to be a concrete jungle. This is going to be something pretty special. That's just a list of all the plantings, which you can't really see on this. It's a little blurry, but we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of plants and trees going in. So, you have the building, you create a great building. That's what people want. But if it's in the middle of nowhere, nobody's going to move in. We need people, we need the building full. We know the demand is there. But what is it close to? Like you can't live in the building always. You have to be able to access the outdoors. I'm a farm boy and love to be outside. So again, that's a crucial thing for me. So the designated bike lane, that's just a few steps from the property where the star is there, is crucial for me, and I think for my tenants. They'll be able to access the trail system, and that's going to be a real important amenity. Again, the walking trails within the property and outside the property and in the park. Again, for a number of reasons, that's crucial for the well-being of our tenants and the success of our project. Shopping, obviously, King George has a ton of shopping. Things are obviously changing with the pandemic, with online shopping, but we think when we put this kind of density into a location, businesses love people. The more people that are around, it will attract businesses attract jobs, and we think that a development like this is really going to help revitalize the King George really highway commercial feel to more of a high street, main street feel, with boutique shops, coffee shops, so forth, that type of shopping. And we're hoping that what we create here is going to really inspire people to do the same thing. Fill up these empty parking lots with usable, functional buildings and shops and amenities for the whole community. Of course, transit is key. We know that the higher the density of the building, the less cars that are used, and the more transit is used. So we have 2 transit bus stops right outside. I think there's 3 bus routes, which is crucial. We don't want people driving. We want people walking and staying healthy. So the way we're thinking that we'd like to develop the property right now is in 2 phases. It's a big project. It's a special project, and we want to make sure we do it right. So we want to do it in 2 phases. And, we're talking with the city on, everything regarding this property. Nothing's carved in stone yet. It's a work in progress, and I think we're working really well together and we're on the same page. So as of right now, we're proposing the building in the back to be built first and kind of build our way out. So this is what the building, the phase 1 portion would look like. And then once that building is done, we would finish off with the phase 2 building. And then we would have a complete site. So that's a little, just an overview of what we're doing. I'd like to thank everybody very much for their time tonight. And myself, Michael Lowith, our planner, Steve Cornwall, and our, I think we have James Garten from Sierra Construction, and I think maybe Adam Morris from Sierra, and Andy from Agar Architects. I think they're not here, they were supposed to be, but we're here to answer any questions that you may have. So I'll give it back to you, Sean. Oh, I guess I have to get out of this first.
That's okay. You can leave it up if you want, or go to a rendering or the site plan or something like that.
Yeah, I could do that. Why don't we?
Just if there's any questions specific to the site plan, we can maybe point to it that way.
Sure.
But I guess we can open up the floor now to questions. I'll turn it over to the councilors to start off. If you wanted to ask questions or make comments now, or if you wanted to hear from the public first.
I would much prefer to hear from the public first, if I could,
Okay.
Sean.
Yep. I think that's a good idea. Darlene, if you want to maybe bring
Yeah, Sean,
someone. Thank you.
we have Patricia McDougall that would like to ask questions. Go ahead, Patricia.
Yes, good evening, and I'm very pleased to be part of your meeting this evening. Thank you for inviting me. Just had a couple of ideas. Just wondered about, are these going to be like 2-bedroom apartments or 3-bedroom apartments? Do you have that option? And about what your square footage might be for each size? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. So
Oh,
can you
thank
hear
you.
me? It's Michael Lowith. Okay.
Yeah.
Great and very, very important questions. Yeah. So obviously, the older people, even though they may want or need 1 bedroom, they always want 2 for, grandkids, an office. So actually, we in this development here, we have 87% of our units are 2-bedroom units. And of course, with accessible units as well. The average square foot in this particular building is just under 1,000 square feet per unit. The one thing that I'm, kind of spent my life working on is efficiency and functionality more than anything of units. I've been in so many 1,000 square foot units that really function as 800 square foot units. There's hallways, there's corners, there's wasted space. So I've kind of spent my life, trying to design, great functional spaces for, that people can actually live a life in, not just to take fancy pictures like I showed you earlier, nice renderings. People have to live in these spaces and love them. Actually, a funny story is our first building, my wife and I, what we did is we just laid in bed one night and we, 2 people in real estate, this is what you do. We just decided, hey, let's try to figure out, my wife, she's had, thousands and thousands of units that she showed to buyers that they didn't want to buy the unit for one reason or another. So my wife has every possible excuse why someone doesn't want a unit. So we thought, hey, let's use that knowledge and try to create a floor plan that people will buy. And, you would bring them into it, and they as much as they want to put the unit down and say there's something wrong with it, they can't. So that was really what we did. We designed 4 or 5 units. I think it was 6 units actually. And we went to our architect and we said, I need 100 of these and wrap them into a building for us. And that's how it really started. And, so these units are very, very highly designed and efficient. And, they're just under 1,000 square feet, but they really function as a lot larger, like, 1,100-1,200 foot units based on the size of each room and the functionality of the space.
That sounds very good. Thank you. Do you have a 3-bedroom unit, or are you just a single bedroom or in a double?
Yeah, we don't have any 3-bedroom units.
No. Okay.
We have 2-bedroom plus dens.
Oh, okay.
Which so in a pinch, you could have a 3rd bedroom.
Yeah.
But we really feel the sweet spot is 75% or more 2-bedroom units.
Yes.
And we'll have some smaller units. People want some smaller units, and a few of the 2 plus 1. But the focus is really the 2-bedroom unit.
Well, then with the plus den, that sounds excellent as well. I noticed you say you have a concierge, which is lovely. What other sort of security situation have you got set up for, like people that wander through the park or something to, protect the residents of the building type of thing?
Right. Well, here we're probably going to have a full-time security guard as well. The property's big enough. These are all the things, the perks that you get, or they're not really perks; they're essential. The more units you have, the more you can spend.
Yeah.
Spend on amenities, spend on security, spend on all these things. And so obviously it's a secured entrance as well as a concierge. There's a management office in each building. The key fobs, getting into the parking is all, fob access, intercom system, all that type of stuff. So it's going to be very secure.
Okay, well, that sounds very good. I appreciate your answering, and that's all I have for tonight, but thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you.
We now have Andy Ransom. Andy, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
I'm actually the architect.
Ah, okay. But I thought, I just didn't know.
Okay, no problem. I can answer questions that may come up.
Okay. Sean, that's it for our attendees.
I would have a question. Darlene?
Yes, go ahead, Alex.
I think Alex Morris was an attendee, so he does have a presentation prepared.
Wonderful.
Go ahead, Alex.
Go ahead, Alex.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Loweth, just 2 comments I have. I question your comment that there is a ton of shopping on King George Road. Certainly not north of the 403. There are a few small shops, but you'd be hard pressed to walk to any reasonable size shop. Getting a lot of funny noises. Okay?
You're breaking up a bit, but I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
And I'll just remind everyone who's not speaking to put themselves on mute so that we don't get feedback.
Okay. The second question, Mr. Loweth, is about accessibility. Are the units planned for walkers, wheelchairs, electric wheelchairs, size of elevators, size of doors, steps, things like that? Could you comment on accessibility, please?
Oh, that's a great question. So yeah, the units, there are designated units. There's several accessible units for every unit type. So whether you want the smallest 1-bedroom or the largest 2-bedroom, there's options for accessible units. And those are, wheeled-in showers, wider doorways, hallways, more room between the kitchen cabinet and the kitchen island. The whole site is accessible with a walker or wheelchair. That's one of the reasons we wanted to put that pathway system right throughout the perimeter of the property. So you can't see it here now, and you really have to see it on the detailed architectural drawings. But the elevators, you can obviously go to up on the podium to get picked up or dropped off or whatever. But those elevators also go right down to the ground floor, and there's direct access to the north side of the building right onto that path system. So if you're in a walker or a wheelchair, you can go from anywhere within the building, the gym, the pool, the penthouse, wherever you are, and you have flat surface all the way right out onto the street. So it's crucial, and that's a big thing that we have asked every single day by our tenants, that's available.
If I move into a regular 2-bedroom apartment, and then 3 years later I become disabled, I have to change units, right?
Actually, we would probably retrofit the unit for you.
Uh-huh.
To keep you where you are.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Alex. I guess at this time, if there's no other attendees, we can turn it over to maybe Councillor Sluss, if you wanted to go first, if you had any questions or comments.
Yeah, I've got a few here, if I could, Sean. I've had a lot of emails from folks asking questions, so some of them are here, some of them I think apply a little further down the road, should we go that far? But I'll start with this. You indicated, I think you did, Sean, that there was a zoning amendment needed because of height, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you also indicated that there were some variances. Do you know how many variances and what are they?
There's an interior side yard variance.
For folks that don't know what that is, can you explain that, please, Sean?
Sure. It's the side yard is the distance between the building and the property line to the north in this instance. It's roughly, I think, 5.6 meters when I think 7 meters is required for a mixed-use building abutting a residential zone. So that would be the other variance that they've applied for.
So there's only one other variance besides the height. Is that correct? Everything else conforms.
It all depends. We're still working with the applicant on some of the details of this project and how it will roll out. For instance, if phase 1 is built out and it doesn't contain commercial unit, it's no longer a mixed-use building. In which case, the regulations of the C8 zone change. You could maybe consider them a little more permissive for mixed-use buildings. When you would introduce a strictly residential building into the equation, then the zoning regulations become a little more restrictive. It's something we're still working with the applicant on.
Right. Would there be a shadow study required?
Yes, there would, and one was submitted with this. Okay,
because again, concerns have been raised about the such a large imposing structure right on the park, that you're going to cast a huge shadow. I guess it would be what, in the morning? Is that when the shadow would be there?
Yes, that's correct. We've reviewed that in concert with Parks and Recreation staff, and they didn't raise any objections to the shadow study. It can only cast shadow for
Would-
about an hour at a time, and it hasn't done that. So
Okay, would that shadow protrude into any residential homes in that area?
I'm going to actually pass that on to the applicant. I know their planner, Stephen Cornwell, is on the line. And
Okay.
they are familiar with that study, so I'm just going to direct those questions towards them at this time.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.
Yeah.
Steve or Andy, do you want to answer that question?
Sure. We're still working with the staff in terms of a review of the shade and shadow study. But yes, when we submitted it, we are convinced that we meet the city's requirements in terms of how much shadow is permitted to fall on neighboring properties. And there, because of the distance between this site and existing homes, both on the east side of King George Road and the ones, the closest ones actually back onto the park on the north side of the park, there really isn't much shadow cast on those areas.
So there is shadow, but not much. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the specifics of shadow studies, there's guidelines for how much is okay. I mean, at the very crack of dawn, you know, technically the shadow extends across the whole city, those sorts of things.
Right.
But,
No, I understand that. I think
That's why we're thinking
the
more
question that was posed, the question posed to me was, folks that live there want to know if there's going to be a shadow on their home, which I think is a reasonable question. So what I'm saying to you is, are we going to put a shadow on anybody's home that would be in close proximity to this development? That's simple yes or no.
I might let Andy Ransom answer that a bit better to be more specific.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay, good. Yes, the answer to your question, Councillor Sless, is yes, it will cast a shadow on some of the adjacent homes, but we believe it's within the criteria from the City of Brantford shadow requirements. We're working with the City of Brantford and the staff on that shadow study. It's not finalized, but there will be shadows cast on adjacent residential properties, but within the time periods that are allowed.
Okay, would those studies be available to those homeowners?
That would be up to the City of Brantford. I would imagine that they have a transparent process in which people could see that. I don't know. I would pass that over to Sean.
But there's no propriety of those studies. They're a public document.
I would think so, yes.
Okay. And I guess while we're talking about studies, would a traffic study? Again, I've had concerns raised. It's a busy road that you're building upon or abutting, and the traffic is quite heavy there now. The opportunity to widen that road is very restricted because of existing buildings. So what's there is there, and so we can't create more lanes out of no space. The concern was dumping this many cars onto that roadway is going to cause congestion where there already is congestion. The intersection, the closest intersection, which would be Oxford and King George, is a very busy, very I wouldn't say dangerous, but it has incidents at that intersection. And again, if someone's coming out of this development and they're trying to turn left onto King George Road, I'm not sure how they would navigate that. Can you help me understand that better?
Yeah, if I could respond to that as well. We have prepared a traffic study. We've got a consultant who followed the city guidelines to develop it. The results of that study are basically finding that as compared to the former restaurant on the site, more or less the total amount of traffic in and out of this property would actually be less than when that restaurant's operating at full capacity. So in that sense, we're already starting with a situation where we're not expecting a problem because there wasn't any significant problem with how that restaurant operated, despite how busy King George Road is. What you also get with residential traffic patterns as opposed to a commercial restaurant like that, it is more spaced out, even though you do have busy periods in the morning and in the afternoon when people are going and coming back from work or from shopping or whatever. It's not a packed facility on a Friday night or anything like you might get with a bar or a restaurant.
Okay.
So yeah, at the end of the day, we're very confident that the traffic from this site will be able to work safely within the King George Road environment, and it won't overload any the capacity of the road or any of the intersections in the area.
Okay, thank you. These are rental units, correct? This isn't a condo. This is a rental unit?
It's going to be we're building it as a condo building, but they will be owned by my company and rented out. They will not be for sale. So it will function as a rental development.
Okay. And can you give me a range of rental? Like a 2-bedroom, what would a 2-bedroom rent for a month?
It all depends on what our final budget is to build the building. I
Okay.
don't want to lock myself down.
Okay. Well, they're not going to be $500 a month, correct?
They're not going to be 500, or they're not going to be 3,000 a month either. They're going to
somewhere in between.
I'll tell you what I did is I took the newer buildings within the city, and I tried to make the rental rates competitive with those other newer buildings.
Okay, I think anecdotally, I think anecdotally, I've heard that the newest ones in the city that are significant size would be at Dunstan and Park Road and Wayne Gretzky Parkway. And I think my understanding is they're around 2,000, 2,200, somewhere in that range.
Those were the buildings that I looked at the most. I actually watched them be built, and I know those buildings very well. We're going to be competitively priced with those buildings, okay. But obviously we're going to have significantly more amenities and so forth. But no, we're not here to price ourselves out of the market. We want our buildings full. My policy is I want zero vacancy. And to do that, you have to be competitive with your pricing.
Sure. How many total units are proposed in these two buildings?
There's 408 units plus the commercial on the main floor.
Okay. Is it proposed to have car charging stations on the site?
Absolutely.
Electric
we put them
vehicle?
in all our buildings. So yeah, there'll be electric vehicle charging stations. What I've always wanted to do, and this might be a great place to do it, is actually have a car share program where, I provide 2 or 3 little cars that are parked close to the front or, right by the front doors. And our tenants will, through our website, if they want to go shopping or, just use our cars. We think that would significantly reduce the amount of, hey, this is, the people in this building are young professionals or, retirees, empty nesters. They're not driving a lot anyways. And to have a car sharing program, I would love to do that. I think I did the math on it a year or so ago. It would significantly save the amount of cars that we need to house and people need to own. So that's something I'm really excited about trying here. But definitely the car charging stations is a must.
Okay, and I just got a couple more, if that's okay. The older folks that perhaps are using an assisted walking device, whether like electric carts or scooters, what happens to those? Do they go up to the unit, or is there central storage, and are they charged in those central storages if that's where they go, or do they go on an elevator and go to the unit where they live?
It really depends on the individual. Like we're going to have a bike room in the parking garage, so people could drive right into the parking garage, right? Seamless entry. There'll be chargers that they can charge there. If they want to bring them up to their units, that's fine too. We're here. It's like hotel service. It's like the tenants tell us what they want, and that's what we do.
Okay. And just finally, I'd like you to comment
within
on
reason.
something.
Within reason, I have to.
Okay. Yeah, it's got to be legal.
That's right.
There was a letter to the editor by a local architect. One day this week, I think it was Tuesday, and he was not speaking highly of the development, and he said, we don't need a 1970 North York solution to housing in Brantford. We need better. Can you comment on that? He was referring to this project.
I agree 150%. That's exactly what we don't need. We need something that is the quality, is amazing quality, forward-thinking, large units, efficient units, catering to our demographic. We need, it needs to be amenity rich. It needs to be lifestyle oriented. It needs to be well programmed. It's like I said, it's white glove hotel service. Those big towers, to me, those are really going to become the affordable housing in the future. Once developments like this are built and people see the difference, if they're able to move into an environment like this, they will leave those big buildings that have been run down and poorly managed and overpriced, and they're going to end up with us. And I feel that's going to free up a lot of units in these older, poorly run buildings. And we need that. We need more vacancies in those buildings. They have a cost structure that's a fraction of what new builds are. They can turn a good profit by charging a lot less rent. I'm glad for those buildings. I think they're just temporarily holding our tenants until we're up and going.
Okay.
But I would never want to own one.
Okay. And just finally, if I could, there are a lot of members of the public who have a lot of opinions and have a lot of ideas and suggestions and concerns, the whole gamut, but they're not comfortable talking in a format like this. How do they reach out to you to talk directly, Michael, to get either clarity or to voice their concerns or their support for that matter? Well, whatever it would be, if they would like to talk to your company about this project and they're not comfortable with this format, how would they go about doing that?
Well, if they just go on our website, the email on there is my email, and the phone number is my cell number. So they could just get on there and call me or email me directly.
Okay, and I guess failing that, if they're not maybe tech savvy and they don't use the internet at all, they could call the city, and would that be acceptable to you that the city give out that information that they can contact you directly?
100%, but I warn them, this is my favorite thing to talk about. So they may be on the phone for a long time with me.
Okay, appreciate that.
But absolutely, nobody has all the right ideas. Like, I need public input. I need ideas. By listening to people, that's how I get good ideas. We take those ideas, we sit down as a committee, we figure out how we can implement the best ones. So no, that's amazing. I'd be happy to. I encourage it. Okay,
thank you. And then I guess to you, Sean. Can you give a timeline at all to folks that are watching? This is going to come for a zoning change, a zoning amendment. Do you have a time frame for that?
We don't have a time frame at this point for when it will come to the committee of the whole. We're still working through some of the details of how the site may look.
Okay. How would the members of the public that want to attend that meeting how would they go about knowing when it was coming? Will they get notification from the city? Will there be a distribution?
Sure. All property owners within 120 meters of this site will receive a written letter in the mail advertising that that meeting, as well as if there's anyone else.
We have the option to expand that circle, do we not? Because we're in a commercial area, and I don't know whether that 60 meters is going to catch a lot of the housing, but it's the housing that have concerns, not the other commercial.
Right. It is 120 meters as per the Planning Act, but I would defer that to my manager, Joe, to actually.
Thanks, Sean. And actually, good evening, everyone, and everyone on YouTube. I'd like to maybe clarify a couple things here. I'll start off with that question, Councillor Sless. And absolutely, as we've done in the past at the councillor's request, if you want planning staff to go beyond the 120 meters, which is the minimum under the Planning Act, we can definitely do that. So if there is a request by yourself or Councillor Utley or one of the other, let's say the ward boundary is King George Road for the neighboring boundary, and Councillor Martin's here this evening, we could extend it beyond the 120, which is what I've said, the minimum under the act. So that can be looked at further. There's a couple of other things too, and as Mr. House has already indicated, we're in a process right now where we just, we're at the beginning. Let's just say the first quarter of this, we've got it in circulation to all the necessary city departments and other other provincial or other agencies that need to be circulated on a development of this nature. The Planning Act does require that with a rezoning exercise, they try to mandate it is a mandated 90-day requirement to get something in terms of a decision before our council, and we strive to do that. We don't always meet the 90 days, so it'll likely go beyond that if there's comments that come up out of this detailed circulation. I think we've heard some matters this evening from yourself and your constituents about sun shadow, about transportation and traffic, and those are the actual items that are currently under review right now. We haven't settled on anything. If there's real significant or concern with respect to our guidelines and policies being deviated from, we may provide other suggestions for the developer of this proposal, Mr. Or Michael, for that matter. And we've been working with him and his development team, his consultant team, and if there's matters that come up with respect to some of the things we've heard today, we will discuss those further, and this may initiate a second circulation or resubmission based on those comments that they'll receive from technical staff as well as agencies. I think that summarizes most of the questions. If I've missed something that you weren't very keen on in terms of a response, I'd be more than happy to answer them, Councillor Sless.
Can you tell me how many opportunities will the public have to address this issue, Joe?
So in these types of circumstances, and as you know, we do our best to, hopefully strive to get as much public as we can, especially for these open houses. They're not as you may recall, pre-COVID, they were a little bit better attended because people like to go out in person and talk and feel and chat about these types of things. And as Michael and Sean has already said, like, the city is always available and approachable if there's questions to be asked. If they come through any of the ward councillors or they come directly to staff, we'll be happy to address those and document those going forward and address them as best as we can if we think that they are reasonable from a planning perspective. The other things that happen is there is going to be a mandated statutory meeting, which is statutory under the Planning Act, and we send that notice out 20 days before the actual CAL meeting, which is the planning committee in this regard for folks that don't understand what the committee of the whole may be. And then the following couple of weeks, the council meeting will ratify the committee's decision, and then there's a 20-day appeal period after that. Prior to anything going to council or committee, there is opportunity for the public to contact either the developer or planning staff or yourselves to address whatever concerns they may have with this proposal.
Okay, if I could just make one request, Joe, and that's if you receive any direct feed from the public, that I be notified of it and be aware of it. I'd appreciate that. If I can just be copied, if I'm not copied by the resident, if it could just be forwarded on to me so that I'm aware of the concerns and the, or.
Sean is here, and through this request, he's making note of that now. And Sean, I would also recommend, if you've heard from the public already, because we have done a initial circulation to the public respecting this open house, then please forward those comments on if any of the councillors were not circulated prior to.
Yep, that would be appreciated.
Or
Thanks.
copied.
Thank you. I've got no more questions, so I don't know where we're going from here. I'll turn it to you, Sean. You're kind of quarterbacking this.
Thanks, Councillor. I'd like to turn it over to Councillor Martin if you had any comments.
Yeah, thank you. I'm having trouble understanding all the parking that's involved here. First of all, how many spaces are there per unit? Like I believe one and a half per unit is the minimum. Is that where you're at, or what's the number?
Andy, do you want to talk about the parking requirements?
Sure, Michael. We've used a ratio of 1.25 parking spaces per unit. We have total between the surface parking and the parking structure. We have slightly over that. So we've got about 400 and, what was the number, Michael? 408. And we'd have about 510 to 520 parking spaces, including barrier-free parking spaces as well.
I thought the minimum was 1.5 spaces per unit. Can someone comment on it?
Yeah, when you're dealing with a mixed-use building, it has a lower rate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We've also included parking for the commercial space at a rate, I believe it's at 1 space per 30 square meters as well.
Okay. And those commercial units, how far back do they go? They don't go full depth of the property, do they?
Oh, no.
Because you can't see from the rendering how far back they would go.
Perhaps Michael or Sean, can you just provide to Councillor Martin what the overall gross floor area of the commercial being proposed is?
It's just under 10,000 square feet, the commercial, and it basically goes the depth of the building, the first building.
Okay. And is there underground parking? Where does everybody park?
The parking structure is directly behind. If you look at the rendering here, let me see if I can. This morning I was shown how to draw on this here, but you see on the left-hand corner where it says 141 King George, and you see some people, some bike racks right there. Directly to the right, there's 2 garage doors. Okay, someone did that. Adam did that. Thank you, Adam. So those are the garage doors, and there you're driving into the lowest level of the parking structure where those doors are. Okay. And then there's an internal ramp that is the second floor of the structured parking, and then we have the visitor parking on top. The surface parking.
Okay, so you get 2 levels of garage parking and then the surface parking on top.
That's correct, yes. And just to clarify, from my understanding, a mixed-use building requires 1 parking spot per unit. Our experience is that's not enough.
No.
So we like to do 1.25. We feel that that's the right number. I guess Sean's going to, after all the reviews and so forth, will talk to us about the parking. But my understanding was mixed use building is 1, but we opted to, and I think if it was not a mixed use building, it's 1.25. But we're going with the 1.25 because we think that's the right thing to do.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Sean, could I comment on that parking?
Sure. Floor is open. And I do just want to clarify one point. The parking requirement for an apartment building is 1.5 spaces per unit, not 1.25. But go ahead, Alex.
According to Ontario statistics, the number of vehicles per household is, I think, 1.4. So there would be 1.4 vehicles for 408 units. Do the math, not me. Could I also comment on the shadow?
Yes, please.
We live in the condominiums, which where our front door faces east, and the sun rises beautifully these days, and we get shadow on the back deck until about midday, and then the sun goes around, and then we get shadow on the front. So there are no shadows coming across the house from which would be from the north at all. So the shadow is entirely from the east across to the west, and that's the only shadow we get. And we certainly wouldn't be impacted or affected in any way by its shadow from the proposed buildings. Thank you.
Michael, did you want to respond to any of those comments about parking and minimum number of vehicles per household?
Yeah, I think that's the average. I think what we find in high density developments, the parking is lower. It's closer to transit. It's more walkable, especially in our demographic. We're not, our tenants are not two people, two professionals going to work every single day and running kids around to different programs. We have a more mature demographic. The parking count for us is 1.25 is lots, more than enough, but we want to be safe because you can't build more after you've built the building. So yeah, I think in general, with young families and so forth with kids, absolutely. I'm actually surprised it's only 1.4. Seems like everybody has two cars in their driveway, but for a development like this, and especially if we implement the car sharing program, 1.25 is more than enough. At the end of the day, I'm in big trouble if I'm wrong with that number, because I can't build something like this and have my parking count wrong. But we've done our homework. We have other developments, and that's the right number for us.
Thanks, Michael. I think if that's it for comments, we can wrap things up.
Just one thing before you wrap,
Sure.
Sean. I've had an email from a constituent that would like, I think in talking to the shadow study, that it was indicated that what's being done here conforms to the city's shadow study policy. The resident would like to know what that shadow policy is. So if you could send that to me, and then I'll forward it on to the resident, that would be appreciated.
Yep, I can absolutely do that.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
Yep.
If I could, just before you wrap up, Sean, I think there was a question that came out about tenure, and it came from Councillor Sless. And just to clarify, Councillor, Michael is building this as purpose-built rental, but there is a caveat or a policy in our official plan, and it'll be in our new official plan too, that once, even though it's deemed to be, rental, long-lived, let's say, and once occupancy is issued for the development, there's no opportunity to convert the application for condominium. So prior to doing that, there will be a draft plan of condominium that will be submitted to the city to address that, and there'll be you know, a registration process and draft plan conditions associated with that approval. But the way it stands in our current policy framework is if they don't do that prior to occupancy, there's no opportunity, given the criteria that is identified in our policy framework, to convert into condominium later. So it's kind of just I guess maybe something that's being done from a business standpoint by the sounds of it.
That's exactly right. So Steve, please mark that down. We need to get that done.
And if I could, just for the developer, for Michael's and for Stephen, if that is done sooner rather than later, then we can concurrently bring forward the draft plan of condominium concurrently with the zoning bylaw amendment before council in one shot, rather than doing it later on down the road. It alleviates extra work on behalf of my staff, as well as it's less confusing for the public. So if that's something that you are definitely considering, I would suggest that that you make that application sooner rather than later. And it is currently a process that is not delegated to planning staff. So the draft plan of condominium would have to go before committee and council to be ratified.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll absolutely be doing that.
Joe, while we've been having this meeting, we actually did have a question that came in over email. So this might be a neat way going forward with neighborhood meetings to have, you know, people be able to submit their questions who are just watching from YouTube, who might not be on Zoom. So I'm just going to go ahead and read this question.
Sure.
And I think it might be appropriate for Stephen or James or Andy to respond. The question is, how will a building of that mass and height impact noise from Highway 403, potentially rebounding over Henderson Survey or adjacent neighborhoods? Will a noise study be done?
Well, we're not expecting to prepare a noise study given the situation at hand. In terms of 401 noises, I understand acoustics, and I'm not an expert on those, but the potential rebound from a building of this height is not going to be something that's significant, possibly even measurable. It would be my expectation.
So, Stephen, I think it was just a little difficult for me to hear you there. I know you have submitted a noise study for this project. Can you just speak about that a little bit more?
Yes, sorry, I'll try and speak up a little bit too. I apologize, but in terms of the noise from the highway, I don't recall that being addressed. But the noise study, like all of our studies, will be available through the city. So if any resident has a concern about how noise issues are addressed by our application, they will be able to get review a copy of that and see for themselves what's going on with it.
So Sean, if I could just chime in, and this resident is obviously listening and has emailed you, and that's probably one of the benefits of why we do the way we do this on YouTube. And I do like this idea of live streaming, and people don't have to enter into this meeting, but send us questions. I do like this idea, and I'm glad that this individual has done that. So as Sean has indicated, this is for the public and everyone on this meeting, is that the Ministry of Environment, Parks and Conservation has requirements, D6 guideline requirements with respect to noise. And that it governs when a noise study is done for certain types of residential developments like this. And some of the noise sources that are identified in the noise study, which, as I can say right now, most of these reports are in circulation, and not every agency, department, including planning staff, has finalized their review and provided comment just yet. But once that is done, the developer and their consultant team will be advised of what some of those concerns might be with that noise study that has already been submitted, and the parameters of what's being generally reviewed would be the linear noise. So anything that is like a King George or a larger arterial or highway is considered within a certain distance of the proposed location of the development, as well as any stationary noise sources. So if there was rooftop mechanical from some of these neighboring commercial uses, that would have to be addressed as well. And what that ends up doing is identifying the types of conditions or warning clauses for residents in that development, in terms of, you may hear the hum of the highway or the hum of King George from time to time, and or we'll identify the types of building materials. So maybe it's double or triple paned windows in certain areas, as well as any HVAC openings that need to be mitigated as outlined in the noise study too. So I hope that clarifies for the individual.
Yeah, no, if I could add to that again, I've pulled up the noise study just to double check what's going on with it. And yes, the reason, the main instigator for having the noise study completed is the road traffic from King George Road. And our acoustic engineer has essentially determined that the noise from the 401 is too distant to be considered a significant factor for this development. But again, as Mr. Muto has suggested, we're dealing with a situation where there is enough ambient noise from this existing King George Road traffic that the recommendation is for air conditioning, such that people don't need to have their windows open and have that ambient noise inside, as well as I believe they are also recommending noise clauses be included in rental agreements.
Thank you.
Sean, it's Alex Morris. At what point in the evening will there be a presentation?
I'm sorry. I know you had prepared something. I thought. I didn't know if you were still planning on making that presentation, but it is the public comment time. The applicant has made their presentation. Could you maybe provide a little more clarity?
Oh, yes. We were invited, I say we, on behalf of the Condominium Corporation, we were invited to make a presentation, and we have prepared it, and I'm prepared to present it. But I'm just wondering when it should be presented.
Okay. The floor is all yours, Alex. When we opened it up to public comment and question, that was the time. But
okay. Sorry. Thanks very much. Members of council and others, thank you for the invitation to make this presentation tonight. My name is Alex Morris, and I'm making a presentation on behalf of Condominium Corporation number 57, located at 110 Somerset Road, in regard to this request for zoning bylaw amendment. The said bylaw is to permit the development, and I quote this, of a 13-story mixed-use building at the King George Road address, which we are told fits with the city's goal of creating walkable neighborhoods to restaurants and shoppings, a goal which I fully support, but I have trouble discovering things about that. However, we don't feel that this can be achieved by building a 13-story building in a neighborhood of mainly single-family homes on both sides of King George Road, on Oxford and Dunstan Streets, and on Tollgate and Somerset Roads. We feel that this building is not only out of character with the surrounding and adjacent neighborhoods, but there are so many factors to take into consideration for a building of this size on the size and property where it is intended to be built. The surrounding neighborhoods are well established and well maintained and have been developed over many years, and a building of this size would aesthetically add nothing. We totally understand the need for housing. However, when we asked a number of councillors, we were then, by their answers, under the impression that this building was for entry-level families just getting into the market, but nothing could be further from that. This project is now being put forward as a high-end rental unit for 1 and 2 bedrooms. Might be, the rental cost might be a bargain by Toronto standards, but I'm not sure if it is by Brantford standards. However, in relation to this building, it seems that the development of our city fathers today feel that bigger is better, but we question that assumption. Because we are being told that this fits in with the city's plan for more people, but these kinds of buildings are usually built in areas with a number of like buildings, not in a neighborhood with mostly single-family dwellings like this area and the one built on Fairview next to the new fire hall. Both of these new builds are not conducive to the neighborhoods of mainly single-family homes. The why is because government relies on private sectors to deliver new housing because private developers are profit-making entities, with the project success being tied to maximizing investor return. This takes priority over delivering the best housing outcomes for the residents, including lower-income households, which means we cater to the desire of investors rather than that of owners in that area and the community as a whole. Recent bills in the city seem to indicate that investors and developers are being allowed to, and perhaps even encouraged, to dictate the type and direction of growth in this city. We know high-rises require less to build, but density does not bring any positives for the community, but the city gains more revenue, understandable. The builder gains a lot, and of course there is more accommodation available. I refer to the city plan of January 2021, where it says the official plan of the city of Brantford, as published on January 30, 2021, stated that new land use categories will focus on built form versus density and unit counts. Secondly, there will be increased focus on urban design and compatibility that create buildings and spaces that are attractive and inviting. Apparently, we want high-rise, high-density areas that are typically built in urban areas with large number of units. However, density simply means new residential and commercial development at a density that is higher than that which is typically found in the existing community. We suggest that the smartest way to accomplish density is to look at the example of the new apartment condo buildings on Park Road North. Very little housing in the area, and it made sense to build high-rises altogether. It's definitely a more business-oriented build and not just put down in the middle of a long-term community of mostly single-family homes. So why are we building such huge buildings on small pieces of land? Because we don't have any more land to develop? We are already putting up something which is quite, in our minds, quite monstrous behind the Bell Memorial. But again, it is a more commercial area. And just lately, the plans were approved for a 7-story building in place of where a school was demolished on Fairview Drive. Buildings like this require less to build, but density does not bring more green benefits. These projects built in light of the city brings into light the city's embarrassing reliance on real estate and its investment in digital technology and carbon neutral economy is badly lacking. We are told that there is a 2% vacancy rate, but now we are flooding the market to lure more people from out of town. We had a need for a couple of buildings that fit with the landscape where they were to be built. But in the past few years, we have 5 huge buildings that have been built. In areas such as this, density can be accomplished in a kinder, gentler way that have fewer consequences to the existing population. Density can be accomplished through buildings with a smaller number of units. As an example, the apartment buildings in this neighborhood are only 5 stories high, so why not build even a 6-story with levels of underground parking and make the rooms a bit smaller, thus being able to have more units. I'd like to outline briefly some of the reasons why we are not in favor of the size of this building being 13 stories tall. We don't feel that we will have any privacy, but perhaps that is one of the least of the many problems that comes with this type of build. There is already, as has been mentioned, a problem with traffic on King George Road, so this will just multiply it. What hasn't been mentioned, hasn't been emphasized, is that there will be parking space for 545 cars, but with a population of 408 dwelling units, there is a real possibility of having over 700 vehicles connected to this project. Another concern for us is schools. Are you counting on families with children occupying these apartments? And how do the schools handle more students? How will they be affected? What will it do to our healthcare system? There are already problems now getting a doctor for individuals and families, and with the influx of another 1,000 people, where does that leave our emergency care? Lab tests, x-rays, MRIs that are stretched thin now, and wait times are getting even longer. Another concern is employment and underemployment. We have always had a high unemployment rate, higher than usually the surrounding area, and with the influx of more people to fill these apartments, it will not be possible to provide employment for all. Or once again, do you plan on people from out of town that have their jobs and just want to live somewhere quieter? It has also been shown and proven that rapid growth creates food problems. Good for the food industry and the stores, but with other apartment buildings and this one, what does it do to the food prices and availability? And how will it affect property values? Most of the people in the area are older, a lot are retired, and their life savings have been invested in their homes. Although 4 stories and more are being constructed to solve housing shortages, these builds can also produce adverse living conditions. And equally important for those living in this building, that the apartments are isolated. They are difficult to access, hard to ventilate, sharing of hallways, hallway airs. They're far from natural space, gardens, the lakes. There are consequences of both physical and mental well-being, which is now being experienced with COVID-19. Not a lot of opportunities to meet and socialize, even though there are social areas built in. The strain of utilities in the neighborhood, or the need to build more. How much space will be provided for green space outside? It has been mentioned. Commendable. Now, the strain on our utilities. Is the infrastructure of the city available and ready to accept another 1,000 individuals in a high-rise, high-density building. To end, I would just like to reiterate that we are not against building an apartment building of a reasonable height that would fit in with the landscape of the neighborhood it is being built in. A smaller version of what is being proposed would be healthier for those living in it and would fit in the landscape of the area much better. Reference has been made to the person who wrote to the expositor this week that suggested that this proposal, by its lack of creativity, is exploiting the site. Brantford was always a very pretty city, and there are many parks and overall controlled communities. There are still people who want to drive down some of the older streets like Dufferin and see some of the older homes and what it used to be like. But no one will go to see a big, cold apartment building. Sorry. We know that making a presentation is not going to change the minds of those who have already made up their minds that they are in favor. But I would ask each councillor that if you lived in the immediate area of the building, would you support it? And if you were honest, would you say no? Build a 6-story with the 2-level underground parking, which makes it 10-story building. Make the rooms smaller, but please don't spoil the whole area with what is being presented. And I would conclude, we suggest that for the reasons we have outlined, the consideration of this proposal has no place in an official plan for Brantford. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Alex. There were a lot of points you've made there, and I think it would be difficult for us to respond to every single one. So I do have a copy of your notes, and I'll be including that as an appendix in my report to City Council when it does eventually go. You'll have an opportunity at that time as well to make another delegation to the Mayor and City Council through that public participation process. And I've also forwarded your letter to, or a copy of your presentation to the developer, Michael.
Thank you.
You can respond to that as well.
Yeah, sorry, it's Michael Lowith. Mr. Morris, I want to thank you for your comments. You know, a lot, really most of your concerns are my concerns about, you know, how does it fit in? Is it going to meet the requirements of the city for shadowing? How does it affect the neighbors? How does it affect the community? The energy efficiency, what's the strain on infrastructure? You know, these are all questions that I grapple with. You know, parking, you know, how's that gonna, you know, how do we make sure the parking count is right, you know, to keep everybody on our property? You know, all these questions are great questions and great concerns of mine. I've got an amazing team of people. A bunch of them are on this call tonight. And I think we've gone through and talked about every one of these issues, and they're top of mind. At the end of the day, I'm different than a lot of these developers. I'm a family business. I'm going to own this thing forever. I'm going to come to this site every week for the rest of my life. And my kids are going to have to be paying for it beyond that. So we look at things a little bit different. We're, you know, a lot of these big apartment guys, these are multinational corporations. You know, it's all about the bottom line. You know, we operate differently, and we're trying to create something different. But by all means, I would be so happy to sit, you know, come and talk to your condo corp. You know, there's some great conversations there. You know, I'd be honored to, you know, to go through each one individually and and we could talk about it and agree or disagree or, compromise, all those things. But I think it's great, and I appreciate you coming out, and I would, really love to sit down with you and go through each one of the questions and answer them.
Okay, thank you very much.
If I could just jump in a section, I too would like to thank Alex. It's no easy task to come in and be the negative voice in the room. And that's a tough job to handle, and you handled it very well. And I'm sure I speak for Councillor Hartley and myself. We appreciate your candidness. You spoke what was on your mind. And I think that's very, very important that we all hear what's on people's mind, that we don't try to sugar it or make it something that it's not. And I think for me as an individual, I really appreciate your candidness and your coming forward and stating your case. It's appreciated. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sure, I've known Alex for many, many years and never known him to hold back with the truth or how he feels. So it's good to see you, Alex.
Hi, John.
And just one other point to that, I'm a property owner in the neighborhood, the community now. If nobody showed up for this meeting and didn't challenge or question the things we were doing, I'd be wondering if I was in the right spot. This has to be, you talk about maintaining properties for years and pride of ownership, and those are important things to me. And if nobody showed up and expressed those views, I'd be nervous. So it's we may disagree on some of the things, and I'd love to talk to you about it, but that's fine. It's about the passion and the love for the neighborhood that I'm inspired by. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, and welcome, Councillor Utley. Just for the viewers at home, Councillor Utley has now joined us.
Thank you very much. My meeting went a lot longer than anticipated. So thank you, Councillor Celeste, for taking care of things in my absence.
I have had a few more email questions come in while we've been speaking and Alex was presenting. I have a few questions I'm going to direct at the applicant here. The first one could be answered fairly quickly. It has to do with the turning lane. Will one be proposed for this development? And the second question has to do with the park. The question reads, would a 6-story phase 1 building backing onto the park and a 13-story phase 2 building work? Having a 13-story building at the park would diminish the character of the park, as park goers would face this mass of concrete and glass as they enjoy the outdoors. So Stephen or Michael, if you could respond to that.
Yeah, just in terms, sorry, of the.
Stephen, can you actually speak up? It's a little difficulty hearing you.
Sure, I think I'm having a little trouble with the headset, but in terms of the access to the site from King George Road, our transportation consultant has concluded in their report that certainly signalization is not required, and if I understand it correctly, it's just a matter of what we do on site. It would be enough to make sure that a safe egress and ingress is available for this site. His comment is that there's sufficient site distance in both directions, and in terms of volume, it doesn't look like addition of turning lane is warranted.
Thanks, Stephen. And then the other question asked, maybe to Michael, if you'd consider.
Oh, yeah. So, sorry. Yeah, no, I'm happy to answer. So, we're going to build this building within the guidelines of the province and the city. Shadow, traffic, density, all those type of things are going to play into it. Shadowing is obviously huge. We're excited that we're going to be able to offer the same park views that other residents on the park have been enjoying for years. I don't think great views are exclusive to, to a few. I think great views should be, enjoyed by as many people as possible. The reason I bought this property was because of the park, and I cherish it, and I think our tenants will as well. So we're working within the framework of the municipality, the province. There's a lot of stuff. It's in front of all the city staff going through the different analysis of our reports, and they're gonna at the end of the day tell us if this is the right form, and we're just waiting for that.
Could I ask, could I comment on something that Stephen said?
Yes, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Okay, Stephen, in relation to the turning lanes, if, as I suspect, there will be maybe 60 or 100 school-age people living here, and teen and post-teen and university students, and they require busing, would you then have to consider turning lane or turning lanes?
In terms of the requirements for traffic analysis, they've kind of taken those factors into account when they use their all of their tables and considerations were developed with those kinds of considerations incorporated right into their figures. So basically, when they run their numbers and made these determinations about traffic volumes and requirements for various improvements, they have found that these improvements aren't warranted for this facility.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's all the questions that had come in over email, and I think we've touched on a lot of things tonight. So I just want to thank counselors for attending this evening's presentation. Alex and other members of the public who've either submitted questions beforehand or participated here tonight. It's really important for the process. There will be further opportunity for public input as this goes along. I'd like to thank all the staff who helped make this neighborhood meeting possible. Lots of people working behind the scenes to get this meeting up and running. So thank you to them. And to the applicant for your presentation as well, and taking these questions and working with the community. So counselors, if you have anything else to add, now's your chance. Otherwise, we can wrap this up.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody involved tonight. I think technically it didn't go too bad. Usually we have somebody get messed up with technology and things go a little sideways, but I think tonight it went pretty smooth. So I like the idea of folks watching the live streaming and emailing in. I think that's a great way to converse with the community, because I know a lot of people aren't comfortable with this format. It's nothing that I'm particularly fond of myself, but you play the hand you're dealt. And right now we have COVID, so we deal with this, and we deal with it the best way we can. But hopefully before we're at the final end of this project, wherever that is or whatever that is when we get there, that we'll be in a position health-wise that we can have in-person meetings at that time. And I think that's a lot more interactive, and I think people are far more comfortable being in a room instead of being on a screen. And so hopefully we'll be at that soon. And I think tonight went as good as one can expect it to go given the situation we have. So again, thanks to everybody for participating. It's helpful as counselors to hear what people have to say on both sides of an issue. I think it's important. So
I like your background, Councillor.
Well, I live in Henderson. It's snowing like crazy here. I don't know what it's doing over on Somerset.
We don't allow that.
Oh, okay.
If I may, thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to add my thanks to the citizens that showed up via Zoom or by phone or by email or by letter, any ways communicating is what we all need to hear. And with any developments, there's always some pushback, no matter what it is. It's been our experience over my 10 years, on council that there's always a pushback for any kind of change. But once, you bring people together, staff, the developer, who's, investing millions of dollars in this case, and the community, we can virtually always work out something that may not be perfect, but there's a little bit of give and take that people can accept. So thank you, and I'm sure there'll be another meeting before this is over, and if there is, I hope I don't have another meeting get in the way of that. So thank you, and stay safe.
Thanks, everyone. I guess we can adjourn the meeting.